everybody, and welcome back to Coffin Talk, Interviews with the Living, a weekly podcast that explores how our views on death affect the way we live our life. And this week, our guest is Dr. Katie Eastman. She spent over 35 years helping individuals, leaders, and organizations navigate grief, loss, and major life transitions. As a psychotherapist, master grief coach, and author, she integrates the Kubler-Ross change curve and her Recreate model to transform loss into growth. So with no further delays, we will bring Katie on the show. And how are you, Katie?
I'm doing great. Thank you. It's wonderful to be here.
Awesome. And we had a little bit of a pre-chat, and I know you're going to get into a little bit of the generational stuff. So we'll just jump right into that quick question, which is how old are you? Where did you grow up? And what generation, if any, do you consider yourself a member of?
Well, it's pretty funny because I just turned 65. So reality hit and I was like, oh man, I'm a senior. Okay, I don't feel senior, but I'm a senior. And the other thing I relate to is I'm a baby boomer, but I'm the tail end of the baby boomers.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I was joking with you, Mike, about the fact that one of your podcasts, you talked about baby boomers and grief and how you learned from baby boomers about grief. And I sat back and I went, oh man, that's me.
Yeah. And where did you grow up?
I grew up in Burlington, Vermont.
Oh, wow.
And that had a huge impact on me because my mayor was Bernie Sanders.
Whoa. All right. We're going to have to take a detour into that because I really admire the man Bernie Sanders. And I'm sure I just alienated like 90% of my audience. But
even if it doesn't even depend on what you believe about him. He was the coolest guy. And my father was a staunch Republican. And they used to banter on Main Street about politics. And then my father would come home and talk about their conversations. So I grew up with social justice issues. It really impacted who I became, was Bernie Sanders being my mayor.
So I guess this is kind of an interesting question. Is Vermont a reflection of Bernie, or is Bernie a reflection of Vermont?
Both.
Okay. How about you get into that a little? Because I think most of our listeners are not from Vermont. I actually used to... I went to camp with my family at the Tyler place on Lake Champlain when I was a kid. So that's my familiarity. Oh, okay. Yeah. So beautiful, beautiful area.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. Vermonters, my father used to say that he carried this thing in his wallet and it said, Vermonters don't go to heaven. They like Vermont.
That's awesome.
And that's Vermont. People love Vermont. They love their state. They value their state. My father used to have a bumper sticker that says, welcome to Vermont, now go home. So it's kind of a funny thing, but there's a loyalty to Vermont. It's beautiful. It's really, the communities are engaging and they're small and they're loyal. They're loyalty. Vermonters are loyal to each other. Yes.
That's awesome. And so did you leave and go to school? Did you stay there? Are you still there?
I went to Bates College in Maine.
Oh, wow.
Cool. I stayed in New England,
mm-hmm.
but I still have such strong roots in Vermont.
And so
on the other side of the country.
Yeah. So where did you go for your? I'm assuming you have a PhD or something, or an MD in psychotherapy. Can you explain that path?
Sure. The path really was guided by an experience at Bates, where I was sitting on a park bench in the quad on a beautiful sunny day, and I heard this voice say to me, "You will create children's hospice programs all over the world."
Wow.
And I was having at the time an experience with a friend whose mother had just died. So I was very immersed in the death and dying world going, well, I don't know anything about death and dying. Let me start reading about it. So there was one book on death and dying by Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. Wow. That was it in the entire Bates Library. So I read it cover to cover. Then I had this vision, and that guided my entire life from then on.
Well, what was the vision? Let's hear it.
The vision was, you will create these children's hospice programs. So I knew from there I had to learn everything there was about hospice because I didn't know what it was.
Mm-hmm.
And dying children, what? Huh? And so I had always worked with children. I had a love of children, but dying children, where's this coming from? So I started reading anything I could. And I through a series of circumstances, ended up at an Elizabeth Kubler-Ross workshop, met her, And she affirmed and validated dying children as teachers.
Wow. That's heavy. Yeah. That's
And I was like, okay, I get it. And she and I were walking down the hallway. We had never met. And we were walking down the hallway at the same time. And we simultaneously went like this, which was her sign. She always did this to her, called her spooks, her
mhm.
spirits. And I did it simultaneously. And I was like, what am I doing?
So it's for people listening, it's like a hand signal where you put two
Right.
fingers up almost. So yeah.
Right. So you're kissing the heavens,
Okay.
basically.
Got it. Yeah.
And I didn't know why I was doing it, but I connected with her in that moment. And long story short, she became my mentor 20 years later. I honored her at an event with people from all over the world. I was there when she was dying. Her last words to me were so precious. She said, "Go be a mom." And she taught me so much. She's my guiding spirit. And the book I wrote is inspirited by her work. It really is.
Awesome. I
Yeah.
mean, I don't know if she's like famous. She's famous to me. I know of her. And like I kind of actually she's in the same realm as like Becker, like denial of death and all that. So it's like interesting. And so to meet someone who knew her and all that, and I had never heard of her change curve. So I am going to ask you questions about that later. But I want to go back and just circle when you say vision. Like sometimes when people hear that, they picture like a religious moment, like an epiphany where like someone comes to you and speaks to you. Was it like an actual like visual vision? Like did you have like a dream? Like what?
No, I was wide awake. It was an
Okay.
auditory voice.
Auditory. Okay, cool.
And
Wow. Yeah.
it's a voice that's come to me at very important times in my life.
Awesome.
Growing up in Vermont, my mom always read Robert Frost to me. And she always talked about when you make a decision, it's always that two roads diverged in a wood, and take the one less traveled. So whenever I do that, I listen for that voice. And that voice has come to me at very, very important times in my life. And it's always that same, I feel it from my head to my toes. It's an auditory voice, but it's all of me. And I know it's coming from my deepest soul.
That's awesome. And so I think now would be a great time to ask the only other planned question, as you know, which is what do you think happens when you die? And obviously I want to tailor it to what you just said, which is if you believe you have a soul, can you kind of like explain that with your answer to the actual question?
Well, having worked with dying children and watching them pass, and hundreds of people who died with hospice work, I have absolutely no doubt that they are here and that they transform. And actually, a great story is my daughter, when she was 4 years old, and I was going off to the hospital to help a child die. My daughter stood at the door and said, "Mommy, go help them to their own cloud." And when she said to me, she says, "Mommy, they're not dead. They're just changing." She was 4.
Yeah, that's the kind of stuff I love because it's just
Yeah.
like, yeah.
It's like, make that up? No. And there were times when she would say, she was in the back of the car one day and my father had passed and she goes, "Grandpa, what do you think?" And my husband and I were like, "What the huh? What?" "Oh yeah, Grandpa's right here."
That's so cool.
Okay. Yeah. So, tell me that doesn't, I don't make that up.
So do you think when you die, you're going to stay in this realm and not in another? Do you think you're in two dimensions at once? Do you have an, and it's okay if you don't have an answer to that. I'm just always curious about this.
I really believe they go in and out.
Mhm.
I think they come to us when we need them. I have felt the presence of my parents. I have felt the presence of the kids who've died around me at times. I had an experience last year with a pulmonary embolism where I almost died.
Wow.
And many people said to me, "Those kids kept you alive."
Wow.
Those kids were in the room, Katie. Those kids were there. And I felt their presence too. But because most people die from a pulmonary embolism,
Yeah.
I was pretty close. And so I do believe that they come when you need them. I really do.
And before we go on any further, I should have mentioned this at the beginning. I did briefly 3 years of hospice work. I wasn't, I was a volunteer, but I'm only saying that to relate to you. It's not, your experience is vast and different. And with the psychotherapy element, I mean, it's very different. But I'm only trying to contribute that. Yeah, it's like it changed my life forever. It's why I did this podcast, and it's just phenomenal. I think I want to get back to psychotherapy and I want to get back to that stuff, but I do want to stay on the spiritual track for now. So when you talk about like that feeling from like head to toe and like and that voice that comes in, my mine is not a voice. It's like a knowing. It's like a knowledge base. But I've read like visual, hearing, like I've read that it's
Yeah.
different ones. And so the person who trained me to see that, feel that, and understand it calls it intuition. Is that the word you would use, or
I,
I'm just curious? Yeah.
it's definitely intuition is part of it, but it's deeper. It's a
Uh huh.
knowing. It's
Yeah.
a knowing. It's a spiritual knowing that Kubler-Ross used to say your mind, your body, your spirit, and your emotions are all in alignment. And that's when you know it's from your head to your toes.
That
You're
makes sense.
aligned and it's a knowing. It's coming from your deepest soulful place.
Wow.
And it's coming from about beyond you.
And
It's
so
for a greater good.
So I think this question is going to be a little complicated to ask, but I'm sure you've dealt with it just intellectually and in life. Um, when we talk about a soul, the first jump of conclusions that most people will make is that there's like a moral or ethical hierarchy to existence, and that like a soul can go to hell or a soul can go to heaven, and that just that there's or maybe like a purpose to being on earth and lessons and all that. I'm not asking you to answer those questions, but I am curious when people say it's unfair that children die, that's a question you can directly answer. Not that it's fair or unfair according to the universe, but according to you and your intuition and this vision, how would you explain to someone who's grieving at the loss of their child? Like, how do you explain that this innocent, precious, they haven't done any wrong yet, being succumbs to like, a cancer or something like that?
Well, number one, I would never say that.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
would,
okay.
I
Sorry.
would never,
Yeah.
I would never say something's fair
Yeah.
about a child dying.
Uh-huh.
No way, no way, no way, no how. Because that's a question that's way beyond my understanding.
Awesome.
What I would say, and I have said, and I had this really powerful experience once where I was with a mom whose daughter had completed suicide. And I was sitting with this mom, and all of a sudden I heard her daughter's voice say to me, talk about how I lived. Talk about how I lived, not how I died. Get her to talk about and I kept hearing that. Okay. And once we shifted to that, this mom began to heal in a very different way. And I actually wrote a monologue about it because I just, it was so powerful. And I wrote about it in the book. That's where I really understood hope in grief, because it was a transformational moment where that mom was recognizing that staying focused on how she died was preventing her from remembering how she lived. And
Wow.
that was preventing mom from moving into a different level of healing.
That's
And
awesome.
she did. And very powerfully, when the mom and I, after a couple of years of working together, had our last session, we were walking outside and we came upon the word hope
That's
on this
awesome.
walk. And in the book, I talk about hope because
Mhm.
that's where it just really resonated with me, that we can't answer why, but we can answer how they
Yeah.
live. And these kids, they may not have lived long, but they lived large.
Hmm.
They lived large. I mean, the stories I tell you about these kids, they're phenomenal. They were incredible teachers about compassion and love and understanding and communication and way beyond our understanding. Yeah.
When you had the embolism, am I saying the term correctly? The yeah.
Yep. Yep.
Did you have thoughts that you were dying? Did you have fear that
Oh
you were
yeah.
dying? Did you have
Uh,
apprehension?
oh
Um,
yeah. My awareness was they were telling me that they were trying to get a bed for me to have emergency surgery in Seattle. Well, I'm about 2 hours from Seattle. So they were like trying to get an ambulance ready. And as soon as the bed was ready, they were going to ambulance me down to Seattle, which that's what happened. But it came pretty damn close because my breathing was changing, my body was feeling awful, and I was starting to feel like, oh God, this feels like I'm dying. And so what came to me, Mike, which was so powerful, is I haven't told the people I love them enough. They
Wow.
don't know I love them. They've got to know I love them. No, I can't go. I need to love them. And so I went through my family, my brother, my sister-in-law, my nieces, everybody. I was like, do they know I love them? I want them to know I love them. So please let me live so I can tell them. Well, my poor brother, I call him at the airport the next morning and I tell him, Ron, I love you. And he goes, and he starts crying in the airport. And this is like my perfectly left brain brother
Yeah.
who just doesn't do that. And, it was really powerful. But I tell my friends, my family, we say I love you all the time.
That's
It's,
awesome. Yeah.
yeah. And I really value, and that's my whole shtick is loss teaches us what's most important.
Wow.
So I was losing my life. What's most important to me? The people I know I love them. That was most important to me. So now I know that every time I go through even the slightest, smallest loss, it tells me what I value.
Wow. I love that. That's a profound quote. And yeah, I've lost different things in life, and only with the maturity that I approach it with do I ever get these lessons. And then, the younger versions of myself didn't see that and, had trouble with that. So it's really fascinating. All my greatest growth spurts emotionally come from loss and then
Yep.
addressing it, not ignoring it. So that's profound. And actually that kind of segues nicely into a couple brief questions about just psychology in general, the practice. When I was a kid, like we would throw out the term psychotherapy like really freely. It was just like an 80s term. I'm a kid from that era. Um,
Yeah.
and then as I got older, I was like, I actually have no idea what psychotherapy means. I know psycho is like horror film, like killer, and it always just sounded like really intense. So could you just explain to like the average person the difference between therapy, counseling, and psychotherapy? Is there a strong difference between the three? Want more interesting conversations? Head over to mikeyop.com and sign up for a premium subscription. You'll get bonus podcasts, essays, and other goodies. Plus, it's the #1 way to support the show. Just go to mikeyop.com, MIKEYOPP.com, and click subscribe, and we'll send you a link. Thank you.
There really is. And counseling is when you counsel someone, when you're supporting them through something. Okay. And it's not, even though you do use the basic tenets of psychology, it's more about the human relationship with someone. Psychotherapy is when there is a diagnosis of some mental health issue that needs to be evaluated, assessed, identified, symptoms are identified. It's usually when you are working with insurance companies. But what I love is coaching. And now I'm a life coach, I'm a grief coach, I'm a master grief coach now, and I love doing that. And that is freedom because I don't have to do any of that stuff. I don't have to diagnose, I don't deal with symptoms. I deal with what's most important to you. What do you need? How can we get there? And it's
Wow.
very much oriented to reality, your reality in your life. Like the mom who lost her daughter, that was coaching. That was master grief coaching.
Awesome. Let's segue into the. Could you briefly explain the Kubler-Ross change curve, and then also what your recreate model is? And I would be remiss if I didn't inform you that in our notes section will be a link to buy your book and find it. But also, if you want to, segue into your book and all that, that's totally appropriate. So,
Sure. Okay. Well, the change curve arose because Elizabeth started to see that people were not understanding that with change comes loss. With change comes grief. And for those of you who don't know who Kubler-Ross was, all you have to think about is the 5 stages of grief everybody's heard of. It's on TV, it's on everywhere. She's the one that developed it, but most people don't know that.
yeah, totally.
Okay. So she had a brilliant idea way before her time. And she said, every time there's change, there's loss. And that loss is opportunity. So she took her grief model and she expanded it to any kind time there's change. And I have taken that and in the writing of my book, developed my recreate model, which is those phases. Because Elizabeth identified the stages. Okay. I have the phases. She said the what, I say the how.
Got it.
So I have real exercises in my book that you can read that give you ideas, questions you can ask yourself when you're going through a loss that help you learn from it and help you identify what's most important to you at this point in time. I even have these cards that I sell to people who are looking for just, hey, I'm going through a hard time. I don't know what to ask myself. And so that came from Elizabeth's change curve, that
Wow.
concept. She brought the what. And I said, okay, Elizabeth, I'm going to add the how.
That's awesome.
And
Sorry.
yeah, and her change curve is actually one of the top business models of change
That's
in
cool.
business.
Yeah.
And because it gives you a framework that allows for all the losses that come with the changes. I mean, you think of downsizing.
Mhm.
Well, that's all about loss and all about reframing, and in my language, recreating yourself from this change.
Wow, that's awesome. I'm gonna ask a personal question, but I think it's appropriate to ask you because it's something I get advice on constantly, but I've never been able to quite figure out. So, when I was 34, my first wife and I had a child together, and we raised him together until he was about 2. We got a divorce. She went on a vacation with him to another country, and she never came back. So my son is alive. I've seen him almost every day from 2 to 4 over Skype because of legal reasons and all that. And then it's become intermittent for the next 3 years, and now it's been over a year since I had any communication with him. He knows who I am. He knows me. He liked me last time he talked to me. I don't know why they're not keeping the arrangement to let me talk to him and all that, but that's not my question. My question is, I'm in this perpetual state of loss. Like, I miss my son. It's changed, like you say. It did change me. I'm doing this podcast. I've remarried. I have 2 wonderful kids. One turns 4 in a couple days. So, like, I'm not beaten or destroyed, but I can't let go of my son at all. I mean, not in a good way, and I don't want to. So my question
No.
for you is, like, not from a psychotherapy angle, but from the recreate model and all that. How would you suggest someone who's in like a in between phase? Like, I know my son's going to come back to me at some point. It's just like logical
Right.
and all,
Right.
unless something, God forbid, happens. But assuming things go the normal route, he will find me, approach me. I'm all over the internet, that kind of stuff. So what would you suggest between now and then that I focus on or do with your recreate model? And if this is too heavy, we can delete this, move on. So yeah.
Too heavy? Yeah.
I mean, I figure not. You've watched children die.
My
So.
nickname in seminary was Dr. Death. I don't
Oh,
do
there we go.
anything too heavy.
Well,
No.
then, Dr. Death, please help me out with my
Yeah.
non-death scenario.
So the most important thing that really comes up for me with this is be gentle and give yourself grace, because you will never get over this grief.
Okay. Thanks. That's
It
helpful.
will revisit. Grief revisits.
Hmm.
It doesn't pass. It changes.
Wow.
And you will revisit this grief every time you miss him. And what do you miss about him? Well, what I want to pass on to you is hope lies in your envisioning you're seeing him again
Cool. Wow.
and all the beautiful things about him that you know. And because your mind can't differentiate between being with someone and thinking about them. So
Wow.
you can call on him soul to soul and connect with him soul to soul anytime you need to. And hold on to that hope that eventually you will be reunited. And all of those things that you have valued about him and your relationship with him will once again be. And that's hope.
Yeah, I love that. That was incredible. That I just want to be polite to the people who have helped me. A lot of people have helped me with similar and all that, but that's a very uplifting approach and phrasing of it that I really like. So I can see why you've written a book, and I can see why you're famous and have your career. So that's awesome. I'm really thankful. That was like really helpful because that is something I can sink my teeth into. And I asked because I hope people in my audience are learning and growing along with me. And they know
Yeah.
this story, some of them, but others might have their own version that's much more tragic or less or whatever by their definition. But to me, what you're really helping me see is that hope is a good feeling. Actually, it's like it's a positive, warm feeling. It's not when people say hope is the last refuge of a scoundrel. That's always bothered me because I'm like, well, the context for that is incredibly important. But so speaking of which, we live in this geopolitical crisis right now, as many people would call it. There's three countries that are perpetually warmongering and talking a lot. There's smaller countries that are actually literally involved in wars. So on a geopolitical scale, a lot of people are starting to lose hope, or they're starting to just say things like, well, it's inevitable, blah, blah, blah. So what is kind of your like message for change and hope with all of this? Like, clearly we're going through a change, whether it's artificial intelligence, robotics,
Right.
universal basic income, like things are changing. The
Right.
structure of human labor is definitely going to change in the next 5 to 10 years. So do you have any thoughts on all that? Not like
Well,
predictions, but just,
a lot.
yeah, great.
There are so many levels of loss and layers of loss going on right now for all of us. Some have lost sense of safety, some have lost sense of security, some have lost homes, some have lost so much. And if you focus on what it is that you value most from what's going on right now, if all of us, a friend and I wrote this book called the Peace Guidebook that's coming out next spring.
Cool.
And the reason we wrote it is exactly what you just said. You know, people are starving for guidance on how do we do this.
Yeah.
And so we gave people practical tips for how you live peacefully, starting with you, and that goes outward. So, number one on that list is if you aren't living peacefully and compassionately and empathically, then you got some work to do.
Mm-hmm.
And you start with you. And compassion is going to change this. That's the only thing that can. Love, compassion, and empathy. And if you're not living and focusing on those three things, then you're not part of the change.
Wow.
I'm emphatic about that.
Yeah.
And I see it every day. And we wrote about that. And actually Desmond Tutu's daughter wrote our foreword.
Wow. That's really cool. Wow.
And so there's a lot of beautiful stories in there of people who have struggled tremendously through difficult times. And I want to share with you how I learned about hope the most.
Cool. Please.
I was blessed to work and provide psychotherapy for a 8-year-old in Ukraine when the war started. And she woke up one morning, the bombs were flying all over the place, and she said to me, "I've lost hope. I don't know what it is. I have nothing to believe in. I don't believe in anything. What's hope?" Now, in all my years, my 65 years of living on this earth, I've never had a harder question.
Yeah.
And I said to her, let's figure it out together. And we did. And what arose from it is every time we talked, she would envision one more thing that would be what she wanted in her life. She wanted a cat. She wanted a playground. She wanted friends. She wanted a house. She had fled from Bucha in the middle of the night, and just before that bridge collapsed. A miracle she's alive.
Wow.
And now that child who used to draw paintings on the wall of how she wanted her life to look like is doing gymnastics. She is friends. She had a birthday party. She's got a playground outside her house that she goes to where she met friends. She goes to school. She is a totally different human being. Yes, she lives with the death all the time. She could die tomorrow. They know that. Mm-hmm. Ukrainians know they could walk outside and die any minute. But what do they do differently? They live every single minute.
I
Because
love it.
they know that.
Yeah.
And
so
that's hope.
That's awesome. And it's interesting too, because I think I heard on the way into my 40s, I'm like mid 40s now, but like a lot of cynical Americans saying things like, well, life's too easy here. That's why we're degrade, like why things are going the way they are. And it's not that I agree or disagree, because that's not really of importance to me. But what you said is important to me, which is like, even if life is really good and comfy, living with that sense of purpose and hope is so important, because I think, the ennui, the like, we have too much and now I'm bored and I don't know what to do. Like that is a real issue in this country and probably a lot of other countries. So, wow. Yeah.
And if you can transform anything into compassion.
Yeah, totally.
And in the Peace Guidebook, we're trying to get 1 million people to commit to being peaceful, to wake up every single morning and commit to being peaceful by
Yeah,
making compassionate choices. Yeah, you'll have to sign up. I'll
I'm
send you the.
definitely on.
And it's all about the choices we make. And if we're not choosing compassion, we're not choosing life.
Wow. Wow, Katie, thank you so much. I always give my guests the floor. You can just say one last thing to my audience that you want to, whatever you feel like it. Just some sort of message. You already gave us so many incredible messages, so I can understand if you're out of ammo, but is there anything else you want to add?
No, I really want people to recognize that their losses are their gifts, their superpower. Your
Wow.
loss is your superpower because it allows you, if you allow the grief to be your messenger, your teacher, feel the feels. And that tells you what you've lost, what's most important to you. And then you can transform your life by choosing things every day that bring more compassion and love into your life.
Wow. Thank you so much. Dr. Katie Eastman, everyone. There will be a section in the notes for how to find her book and also how to find her. Obviously, she's a wonderful, compassionate, loving human. But what I really want to reflect on is just that your matter-of-fact approach to how life really is what compels me to really be a fan of yours, because I think sometimes people just want to like pour sugar on the feeling that life is, and life is full of feelings, and it's full of some icky ones and some great ones, and there's not going to ever be this like path where it's only the good ones. So thank you for being so real, and but also having real solutions for how to bring hope and compassion into the equation. To everyone listening at home, you've been listening to or watching Coffin Talk. Again, my name is Mike Oppenheim, and we will see you soon.